Episode 40 of the Interpretation Station is Call to Order. Welcome to all my Jedi fans for this landmark occasion. Number 40, here we go, episode number 40. Sorry I wasn't around. Last week I failed my duty to provide an episode from Jedi. I was very busy last week. It's got a bit quieter now, so the text that we're going to be doing, it's one I posted yesterday. So we're doing the Croatian dialect of Jedi today, and of course the Wham Bam thank you for the land format, or Wham Bam thank you, Hvala Rolanda if you prefer. It's by the Croatian President Zoran Milanovic. It's his inauguration speech from, I think, was it February last year, perhaps? I think it was just before the old COVID kicked off. Anyway, it's a good speech. It's very dense, lots of info. You'll notice from at least the page that I put up from it, there's very little in the way of things that you can leave out. All the information, the combination of the information contained in the speech, plus the occasion, I guess, when it's a big occasion like that, the inauguration of a president, the pressure is on you to render as much of the information you can. I mean, this was, I think, done before, as I say, COVID, so it would have, whoever had to interpret it would have had to do it live, so there'd be no excuse for leaving stuff out because of the RSI. But anyway, as I say, even if you had the RSI, it would be a struggle to leave much out. Okay, so we started off here. Okay, the first thing I sort of looked at, I said, so I inserted this about. So patriotism is about. So, in English, it just sounds slightly more natural putting that about. It's patriotism is about doing something. Patriotism is about being proud of your country, rather than just going noun to noun. Patriotism is in this case, patriotism is its insistence on. Patriotism is establishment of. Okay, it doesn't sound quite right. So you probably want in this, to put in this about. Patriotism is about. Now, what's it about doing? Stalno I uporno nastojanje. Okay, so here what I've done, I've just synthesized all those four words into one: striving. Striving is a great word because, as I say, it just encapsulates all those adverbs, all those, it's like adjectives and nouns into one, synthesizes them into one word. The only thing, so again, I'm presuming I'm mainly talking to English B speakers, is to, for example, if they say in the original, das Feld selber, okay, you can't just say, I will strive. That doesn't sound right. You need to strive to do something, okay, in English. But as I say, like in this, it's great. Patriotism is about striving to affirm those aspects. So that's one of my favorite words these days, striving. Okay, then down here, nadachnutia, more inspired. I think that's the word we're looking for. For nadachnutia, I think you want inspiration. Here it's more inspired. Taj spektar, što bude širi nijansirani taj spektar. I'm giving you here for spectrum. So I like using the cognate with spectre. So spectrum, I like spectrum. But also if you want an alternative, range is a good word. And actually I forgot to, for this word here, niansirani, you might be wondering what's the best way of putting that into English. And I just forgot to actually note it. So the idea I had, you could get away with nuance, the broader, the more nuanced that spectrum. But I also thought calibrated. Calibrated is a very good word to reflect this idea of, just slight difference, a slight, of slightly different shades. So maybe you could say here the broader and more calibrated, the spectrum of commitment. And then, okay, again, this is more for for you English Bs. Just make sure you get the grammar right. The happier a place our country will be. I know what I know what it's like with in speaking Jedi. You don't have the articles, the us and the thes, and I know it can be confusing. So I thought I'd put that in for you to help you. Moving on to the next paragraph. Okay, danas je naša obaveza I odgovornost. Okay, so I like to use this word duty bound. I think it's very, very good word to have. I mean, I guess here you could say it's our responsibility to ensure that, but I would advise you just make a mental note of duty bound. Whenever you hear things to do with obaveza, try and avoid obligated, obliged. This doesn't sound quite right, but duty bound sounds good. Neosice ustrašenim. Okay, so giving you here intimidated. Don't feel intimidated, that's the word you want. And here again, you see, I've added this against after discriminiranim. Again, this is one of those cases where you have to actually add a word in English to make it sound right. You can't just say, you don't want people to feel intimidated or discriminated. You need the against in there, or discriminated against. And here, okay, I know, okay, drugče ili drugčije, okay, I know what the guy's trying to say here. You know, it doesn't matter if it's man or woman, if you're feeling for being different. You know, if you really wanted to reflect that idea of the male and the feminine, you know, it's not being excluded just for the fact of being different, be it man or woman. If you really wanted to add that extra nuance, you know, with the genders. Okay, now this is an interesting one here. The criteria, okay, nationalnam. So ethnicity. I think this is I get the same problem actually when I'm working from Russian as well. I'm always, you know, I always have to think a moment. What's the best way of putting this? But I think that when it comes to, you know, I think this is talking about Croatian citizens, but of whatever it may be, Serb ethnicity or Muslim ethnicity, Jewish ethnicity. And I think we would say ethnicity as opposed to nationality, because in English, when you talk nationality, you think, okay, of a different country. Okay, but I think here it's really about to do with ethnicity. Puke ljudskosti. I think the best, again, the most natural way we would reflect this we'd render this in English, just basic. It's a matter of just basic humanity, as opposed to pure humanity or mere humanity. I think basic humanity in those cases, you know, we sort of say things like it's basic good manners, and I think it's the same idea here. It's basic humanity. Okay, naša budućnost u velikoj mjeri. Okay, so here I would say, you know, don't bother with to a great extent or in great part. You can just say greatly. Our future greatly depends on this, that, whatever it may be. Kako ćemo se odnositi prema vlastitoj kulturi? So I think here the best thing is to treat, how we're going to treat our own culture. I was thinking about how we approach our own culture, but I think maybe treat is better. Okay, amatersko društvo. So in English we would say this is amateur dramatics. Okay. Like these little theatre companies, that's the idea. So in English, we would say culture is amateur dramatics. And again, this is a very specific thing to to Jedi, shall we say, dom kulture. I had to think about this one as well a little bit, what the best way to do it. I guess the best way would be community centre. It's a sort of, it's not quite the same in the UK as it is in the Balkans. This idea of the dom kultura, but it's about as close as it can come. I mean, maybe here one thing I was thinking of is the local theatre. I mean, it's the local theatre, isn't it, on the islands? But obviously, dom kultura is more than just a theatre. It's a whole lot of. It covers lots of different little things. Be it libraries or whatever. So I think the safest bet here is to go with community centre. Okay, then a couple of useful bits of vocab. Suprotstavljanje socijalne isključenosti. So I'm going to hear tackling as a sort of, as opposed to always just sort of, I like to say combating. I like to combat things, but just for a bit of for something new, to tackle. We'd even perhaps say in English, perhaps what we'd say is tackling the problem of social exclusion. I think that is what a British official might say. But I think, you can just say here, tackling social exclusion. Okay, so then for činiti. Okay, našu republiku ne čini I neće činiti. So I've given you a couple of alternatives here, composed of or made up of. And then here, okay, sportski nadareni. Again, I had to think about this one because, okay, this is all fairly straightforward. Not just that, competitive, most entrepreneurial, maybe for poduzet, the entrepreneurial, scientifically, artistically, or we wouldn't say sportingly gifted. That just wouldn't sound right in English. We'd say athletically. He's very athletically gifted. That's what we say about, kids at school who are very good at sport. They're athletically gifted. Or endowed, athletically endowed. That word's got a few strange connotations. Gifted, athletically gifted. And then I've given you another sort of bit of vocab here. Uglednog akademika. Okay, so a good word here is maybe upstanding. Perhaps the one you'd immediately think of would perhaps be reputable academic. But I think in English actually would maybe say sooner an upstanding academic. We talk about an upstanding member of society. Nezaposleni tokar. So I know tokar's got a specific meaning, hasn't it, in Jedi, like what exactly he does with that metal. He sort of turns it, right? It's quite an old expression. But I think you play safe here, okay? You just go with metal worker. I don't think you need quite the detail of what the tokar exactly would do in English. I think the metal worker gets that idea across. You had this, in the American elections, where Trump appealing to, the working class Americans, like especially your metal workers, your guys in the steel mills. I think that's what he would have perhaps said, metal workers. I think that's the most sort of generic term. Okay, and prezaposleni programmer. So I've given you a couple of alternatives here. In demand, a guy who's in demand, sought after. I think, you want to steer clear of saying an overworked programmer, because that doesn't necessarily mean he's doing well. You might be overworked, but in a bad job. I think the idea he's getting across here with the prezaposleni programmer is that they're getting job offers all over the place. So again, we'd say he's in demand or sought after. And then here again, podplaćena radnica na blagajni. I'd say the underpaid cashier. You maybe underpay, you could say shop assistant as well. And then he seems to be making a point that it's a female radnica, okay, not just radnik. So, okay, if you want to get that nuance of the radnica, then you could maybe add girl, an underpaid cashier girl. But again, that's your call. I think if you just said underpaid cashier, that would more or less cover it. And then finally, I was quite pleased with a couple of these things in the last paragraph. Suzbijanje klientelisma. Okay, now I didn't know you had that word in Jedi. I've heard it in Spanish, clientelismo. And a few months ago, I had a great solution to it, so I've given you it here. So cronyism, that's a great word in English. That's really what it is, trying to fight. We call it in the UK like the old boy network. It's basically the whole idea of nepotism and things like that. So I think we would talk about fighting cronyism. And then I've given you again one of my favorite solutions, generally combating for borbi protiv nejednakosti, combating inequality. Again, you can say fighting inequality, whatever. And then finally, this last word here, raslojavanje. This is something I've noticed is coming up more and more, how the stratification within society, society breaking up into all these different classes, which is like in Britain, we've always had the classes, the working class, middle class, upper class. But I've noticed that in other countries, this is really becoming a factor as well. And I think stratification reflects that idea well. Okay, so that was, as I say, it's a very good, very dense text. I hope I've given you a few things some food for thought there to think about. If you've enjoyed the episode, please do give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. I've got new features coming up. You've probably seen it on the LinkedIn group. We've got, if any of you guys are doing Portuguese, I think we've just hired, as it were, a new Lusophone collaborator who's going to be putting up texts from Portuguese into English. Hopefully he's going to be making videos as well soon. And that's pretty much it. So, yeah. Hope it's been good. Okay. All I have to say is that episode 40 of the Interpretation Station is adjourned.